Hello and welcome to the quarterly astrology and spirituality show with Patrick and I. Very happy to be back with you. We are sorry that this video is a little late. I have been suffering from quite a nasty virus for the past 7 weeks, but really pleased to be with you here now. So first of all, let's have a look into the astrology of the spring and what we have maybe been through already and what we can expect.
Thank you so much, Elise. It's great to be back with you. So, of course, there's been a lot of action celestially. We've had Saturn punching into Pisces, Pluto making the transition into Aquarius for 11 short weeks, and Mars moving after that very long journey through Gemini into the sign of Cancer. More recently, we've had the energy in the sign of Aries, 2 lunations. The second, a solar eclipse across the 19th and 20th of April, which did forge a square with Pluto. I feel that what this is really encouraging us to do is invest in our individuality, that Aries energy, but also be mindful of what we're trying to achieve in terms of tangible results, because later on that day, of course, the Sun made its transition into Taurus. The Pluto energy, I feel, really is more to do with the collective. So we're seeing that there are huge changes going on in the world that are influencing us all. And what the eclipse is asking us to do is make sense of this from a more individual level. Now, in terms of the PIP card for the spring, what modality are you going to use this time?
I thought it'd be really interesting for us to just pull one tarot card just to signify this cardinal quadrant. So I've picked the Mucha deck, which is very, very beautiful and was gifted to me by my mother. So let's have a look at what the energy is. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, the card that comes up for us is the Six of Cups. This is such a beautiful card. It's really a card of nostalgia. Looking back at times, it can be to do with our childhoods. This is twofold, really. We could look back on our childhoods and think, you know, I wish those situations could have been different. I wish that I could have got the support that I needed back then. Or we could be romanticising about our childhoods a little bit, thinking, oh, wasn't life freer back then? Or weren't things easier? Or we didn't have social media? And having those rose-tinted glasses on when we're looking back in the past isn't always helpful for us. So this is really a card of sifting through those emotions. It could be that people from our past come back into our lives.
Well, it's interesting that your mum gave you those cards.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And, you know, having that energy just to say old friends kind of reunited again, catching up about times gone by. Maybe we just bump into them in the street or they pop up on social media. So it could be nice just to reminisce a little bit for the rest of this cardinal quadrant.
Oh, that's absolutely lovely. Now, we have got the cookie jar here with looking for the word of the quarter, so I'm giving it a good shake.
Good old shake.
And so who's going to pick it then?
Patrick, you're going to pick it.
Okay, right.
So
I won't look to make sure that it's totally spontaneous. Right, so,
ooh,
okay.
Very good word. Guilt. Okay, not the easiest word to pull out of the cookie jar there, Patrick. But guilt is an emotion that really can make us feel burdened. The thing that came up in my mind, if anyone's ever read Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol or watched the film, when you have a character in there who's got all these chains on them and they're feeling very burdened with things that have happened in their life. So burdened, in fact, they feel they can't move forwards. Guilt is something that we all have to work through. You know, we've all made mistakes, and it's really good to own those mistakes and to take accountability and to be genuinely sorry for things that we have done. But at the same time, we have to, at some point, not let that guilt stop us moving forwards, or, you know, berate ourselves every day to the point that we're not enjoying life.
Yeah, I mean, we both went to Catholic schools, and one of the things they used to say at my school was, however much you wash your hands, you'll never get rid of the original sin, which for a very young child has such an impact on you. you kind of always feel whenever you're doing anything remotely enjoyable that maybe you're doing something that's remotely ungodlike. Obviously times have changed. We live in a much more individualistic environment these days, much less rules led, but guilt can be very burdensome in that regard.
And sometimes we can be carrying around guilt that actually isn't our guilt to carry. An example would be if somebody's parents divorced as a child and they somehow felt that was their fault, or died, or somebody said that we'd done something wrong when we didn't. That kind of guilt can be even more powerful because there's an injustice that goes along with it.
Well, also along that theme, I feel what can happen is that people can project guilt onto an individual in order to control them. Might sound a little bit heavy, but I feel that does happen.
That can happen. So maybe for the rest of this cardinal quadrant, we're just sifting through things that we feel guilty about, maybe things that we want to reach out and apologize about, but also maybe letting go of things that aren't our burden to carry.
That's really, really excellent advice. Now, for a thought for the season, we've obviously had the guilt, but we did think beforehand, what were some of the concepts that we could discuss? And one of them that came up was life experiences. How do you see life experiences? They're not always bad. Sometimes they're very, very positive.
Yeah.
How can we gain from our life experiences in general in the here and now?
I think thinking about our life, it's almost a bit like trying to cycle up a hill sometimes that's really steep, and we're struggling to get up there, and we kind of at times want to just give up and think this task is too hard, because our life experiences shape us in different ways. Some of us have been through very traumatic events quite early in our lives, and that automatically puts us at a disadvantage, competing in the rest of our life. But those negative life experiences are not saying that they're never going to affect us again, because of course they will, but we can use those to our advantage. For example, sometimes when we go through really negative life experiences, we can gain massive insights into humanity, into psyche, into really knowing ourselves and who we are, but also into empathy. And I think empathy is one of the biggest gifts. So if we've just had a very easy ride, sometimes empathy can be a little lacking in those situations, because we often find that connection with others through that grittiness of life.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And obviously, if people do grow up and develop in a very supportive environment, which is not so physically challenging in terms of finance or accommodation, or just being stretched to cope with those basic life demands, you might be a little bit unaware that then maybe people have a completely different life experience. I think every life experience can be like a bridge, so everything we learn is a bridge to our future and can actually enrich us, good or bad.
I love that.
Now, in terms of the astrology, I did mention before about Saturn moving to Pisces, where it will be for the next 2.5 years. It's going to be in two sections, initially for the first 2.25 years, then it will go into the sign of Aries briefly before going back into Pisces. This is a water sign, of course, which is very much to do with the potential for empathy, compassion, healing. But of course, Saturn is about structure and the earth, and maybe we're going to see a much greater push in terms of planetary resources, being more mindful of planetary resources. So that's going to be interesting. And Pluto, of course, is a planet that can uncover things that have been hidden. So through its long journey, which is going to continue again from the 11th of June in Capricorn, but over the last 15 years, there has been a big preoccupation with the material sphere. So I feel that the Aquarius dimension does bring the potential for greater connection, but obviously there is going to be developments of a scientific and technical nature, and to do with obviously the digital revolution and artificial intelligence, which can again bring opportunities, but also can bring some challenges. And funnily enough, I was watching something on the internet last night, and it was actually a card that looked like a horse. So it was an early card that was actually made to look like a horse, and apparently that's where the phrase horsepower came from. And I thought,
wow,
that wasn't that long ago, and how much the car, the automobile, has been adopted, and how quickly we do adapt to different changes. You know, how we've adapted to the challenge of COVID. It's been really difficult at times, very painful for a lot of people, but also taught us things as well about our connection to one another. So evolution for sure through Pluto and Aquarius. And Mars going into Cancer, very much about how we feel about things, the family, emotion, but also not being too defensive, because Mars in Cancer is in its full, but it will be moving into a very wonderful location in the sign of Leo on the 20th of May. And we also have Jupiter, the planet of growth, optimism, hope, and in traditional astrology, good fortune, moving into the sign of Taurus on the 16th of May, which is really exciting. There are deep dive videos for all of those beneath this video. Also, if you would like to have a one-to-one with Alyssa, she is a qualified life coach, has a first-class honours degree in politics and performance, and really has a very attuned understanding of the situation, and has given me an amazing amount of insights and growth and encouragement in the 6 years we've known one another. And also, if you'd like to a one-to-one with me, then please see the link below and you can read all my testimonials. So what would your conclusion be for this spring show for the Northern Hemisphere and the autumn for the South? Thank you very much for joining us. If you are down in the South, what would your conclusion be for?
I would say we can use the rest of this quarter just to really figure out some things about ourselves, really get to know ourselves in a more intimate way. I saw a quote the other day that said, can we really truly love ourselves if we don't know ourselves? And I thought that was really quite powerful. So there are going to be aspects of all of us that are more difficult, more challenging. We all have different sides. We're like a diamond, and we have all those different facets. And some of the parts of our personality are great and, you know, very lovable, easy to like. But some of us have parts of ourselves that are a bit more challenging and tricky, and we all have those flaws. So let's just try and maybe iron a few of those out. Maybe.
Oh, that's so lovely, and it's brilliant to be back with you. And thank you so much for joining us, and wishing you right through to the summer solstice when we do the next show all the very best. Please take care in this fast changing world. So from the A team, it is goodbye from
him,
and it's goodbye from her.
Goodbye.